He thought it was just another rainy night, another quiet visit to the diner. But when a mysterious woman walked in, drenched, lost, and completely out of place, his life took a turn he never expected. A simple act of kindness led to something deeper. But what happens when the truth comes out? When secrets unravel and identities are revealed? Will their connection survive, or was it all just an illusion? Rain poured down heavily, soaking the streets and making it hard to see beyond a few feet. The small diner on the corner stood out like a warm beacon in the cold, wet night. Inside, the lights glowed softly, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the sound of the jukebox playing an old tune. It was a quiet night, with only a few regular customers sitting in their usual spots. Ethan sat at the counter, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. He had just finished a long day at the garage, fixing cars and dealing with customers who always seemed to need their vehicles in a hurry. His hands were rough, his clothes smelled of grease, and exhaustion weighed on him. But this little diner was his escape. It was where he could sit quietly and let the world slow down for a bit. The door opened with a jingle, and a woman rushed inside. She was drenched, her coat dripping water onto the floor. She looked around nervously, her damp hair clinging to her face. After a moment, she made her way to a booth in the corner and sat down. Ethan noticed her immediately. She didn't look like someone who belonged in a small-town diner. Her coat was expensive, her boots polished, and her movements had a certain grace. But what really caught his attention was the look on her face. She seemed worried, like she was carrying a heavy burden. The waitress approached her table and handed her a menu. Ethan tried not to stare and focused on his coffee, but he couldn't help overhearing their conversation. A few minutes later, the woman hesitated before speaking, her voice low and filled with embarrassment. I think I forgot my wallet," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." The waitress gave her a kind smile, but Ethan could tell the woman was deeply uncomfortable. She rummaged through her bag, hoping to find something. Ethan set his coffee down and made a quick decision. He waved the waitress over and handed her a few crumpled bills. "I got it," he said simply. The waitress looked surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah, it's not a big deal." The woman looked up, clearly startled. "Oh, no, please," she said quickly. "You don't have to do that." "It's fine," Ethan replied, offering her a small smile. "Everyone forgets things sometimes." She hesitated, then smiled back, a small, grateful smile that lit up her face. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to, but thank you." Ethan shrugged and returned to his coffee, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. Helping people came naturally to him, and he wasn't looking for attention or thanks. The woman finished her meal quietly. When she was done, she walked over to him. "Thanks again," she said, pulling a napkin from the dispenser. She wrote something on it and placed it in front of him. "Here's my number. I'd like to repay you somehow." Ethan looked at the napkin, surprised. "That's not necessary," he said. "It was just a meal." "Maybe," she said, her smile turning a little shy. "But it meant more than you know. Call me sometime." With that, she left, the bell above the door jingling softly as she stepped into the rain. Ethan picked up the napkin and read her name, Sophia, followed by her phone number. He smiled to himself, wondering who this mysterious woman was and why their brief encounter felt so significant. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Sophia got to know each other. It started with a phone call, then a coffee date, and soon they were meeting regularly. Sophia was warm and easy to talk to, and Ethan found himself opening up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else. He told her about his life as a mechanic, his struggles with money, and his dream of opening his own garage someday. Sophia listened intently, always encouraging him. She shared bits of her life too, though she was careful not to reveal too much. She told Ethan she worked in business but avoided details. She wanted to keep things simple. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone cared about her for who she was, not for her wealth or status. But Sophia had a secret. She wasn't just an ordinary woman. She was a billionaire CEO, running a successful company that often made headlines. She had spent years being treated differently because of her wealth and was terrified that telling Ethan the truth would ruin everything. She didn't want him to see her as a rich CEO. She wanted him to see her as Sophia, the woman he met on a rainy night in a small diner. The truth came out one afternoon when Ethan decided to surprise Sophia. He stopped by her apartment with her favorite coffee in hand. The door was slightly open, so he stepped inside, calling her name. What he saw made him freeze. The apartment was massive, filled with expensive furniture and artwork. On the coffee table lay a glossy magazine, with Sophia's face on the cover. The headline read, "Sophia Montgomery, the billionaire CEO changing the game." Ethan stared at the magazine, his mind racing. The woman he had been falling for had been keeping such a huge part of her life hidden from him. Sophia walked into the room and stopped when she saw him holding the magazine. "Ethan," she said softly, "I can explain." Ethan turned to her, his expression a mix of hurt and confusion. "Explain what? That you've been lying to me this whole time?" "I wasn't lying," Sophia said quickly. I didn't want my money to get in the way. I was afraid you'd see me differently." "You didn't trust me," Ethan said, his voice low. "You thought I'd care more about your money than about you." "That's not it," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "I just wanted us to feel real. I didn't know how to tell you." Ethan shook his head, emotions overwhelming him. "I thought I knew you, Sophia, but now I'm not so sure." He set the magazine down and walked out, leaving Sophia standing alone, tears streaming down her face. Days passed, and Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Sophia. He felt betrayed, but he also missed her. One evening, he found a letter in his mailbox from Sophia. In it, she poured out her heart, explaining how lonely her life had been and how much she feared being judged for her wealth. She wrote, "I fell in love with you, Ethan, because you see me for who I am, not what I have. I just hope you can forgive me." Ethan read the letter over and over, and his anger softened. He realized Sophia had been scared, just like he was. A few days later, Ethan heard about a gala Sophia was hosting. He decided to go. When he arrived, the grand hall was filled with elegantly dressed people. He spotted Sophia standing alone, looking distant. Taking a deep breath, he walked up to her. "Sophia." She turned, eyes widening. "Ethan?" "I was angry, but I realized I wasn't fair to you either," he said. "I don't care about your money. I care about you." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. "You mean that?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Let's start fresh. No secrets." She smiled through her tears and hugged him. "You were always enough for me," she whispered. And with that, their future began, built on trust, love, and the strength they found in each other.